With a transonic HD03 monitor, you can measure delivered blood flow, recirculation, vascular access flow, and cardiac output during hemodialysis.
Hello.
Transonic arterial and venous flow dilution sensors are attached to the HD03 monitor and are clipped onto the arterial and venous blood lines of the dialysis patient. Measurements take less than 10 minutes for each patient. Results are written to the data transfer module plugged into the USB port on the back of the HD03 monitor. The HD03 monitor has an integrated computer with interactive touchscreen operation. There is no keyboard needed. Keypads you can touch will appear as needed, for example, to enter patient information. On-screen directions are displayed at various steps as you use the system to take the measurements. An onboard battery allows the HD03 monitor to be used as a standalone device without being plugged into a power source, so that it can be easily moved from patient to patient in a clinic. The battery will last for approximately one dialysis shift. Battery indicator lights located just under the touchscreen indicate the remaining charge and warn when the battery needs to be recharged. The compartment for the battery pack is on the same side as the power switch for the HD03. Just below it is the plug to connect to a standard power supply, which also recharges the battery. The removable data transfer module is plugged into the USB port at the top of the back of the monitor. On the back, opposite the power switch, is the cradle for the flow dilution sensors. Below the cradle is the connection for the sensors. The slot at the base of the monitor is the site to mount the monitor onto an IV pole with a pole adapter kit. To set up the system, take the HD03 monitor to a patient's chair. Make sure the arterial and venous flow dilution sensors are connected to the HD03. Open the lids of the two sensors and add petroleum jelly to the sensing cavities. Then place the sensors on the respective blood lines of the patient, 2 to 4 inches from the needle connection. The red sensor is clipped onto the arterial line with the arrow in the direction of flow, and the blue sensor is clipped onto the venous line in the direction of flow. The data transfer module must be plugged into its port on the HD03 monitor. If you plan on measuring cardiac output, you must use a transonic cardiac output data transfer module. In addition, you must use transonic flow QC tubing inserted into the dialysis lines. To operate the HD03, turn on the power switch on the side of the monitor. After the initialization process is completed, the list of patients scheduled for the day appears. This is called the Select Patient screen. An empty box to the left of the patient's name indicates that this particular patient is scheduled for this particular day, but has yet to be measured. When the measurements are completed for a patient, the box next to the patient's name will be checked. If the patient is not in the list, you can find or add them. When you press Find Patient on the Select Patient screen, a keypad will appear. Press the first letter of the patient's last name and a list of patients will appear. Highlight the patient to be measured and press Measure Patient. You can enter a new patient by pressing Add Patient. An on-screen keyboard will appear. Touch the letters to enter the new patient's name. Additional character keys can be brought up by selecting the blue arrow key. To start performing measurements on a patient, press the Measure Patient icon. A Select Tubing screen will appear on which you select the type of tubing being used for this patient. To choose the tubing type from the library of tubings, press the first letter of the tubing manufacturer and then select the appropriate tubing from the list that appears. To continue with the measurements, press the OK button. To begin measurements, choose a protocol from the Choose Protocol screen. You have a choice of choosing one of the following: delivered blood flow, recirculation, or access flow. A fourth option, cardiac output, is only offered if you have a cardiac output data transfer module inserted into the USB port on the back of the monitor. To measure delivered blood flow, press the Delivered Blood Flow button. A screen will appear on which you will enter the dialysis machine pump setting. Compare this number with measured delivered blood flow. The reading should be within 10% of the pump setting. Press Measure. The percent difference between the pump setting and the delivered blood flow is calculated, and the results are displayed on a green bar. If the result is greater than 10%, the green bar will turn red. If this happens, check to see that the sensors are placed correctly or if the dialysis lines are kinked in any manner. More than a 10% discrepancy between the measured delivered blood flow and the pump setting can also be caused by an incorrect needle size or placement, the condition of the access, the calibration of the dialysis machine, or the sensors. Also, check to see if you have the correct dialysis tubing selected by returning to the Select Tubing screen by pressing the Measure Patient button. From there, press Select Tubing. After delivered blood flow has been confirmed, you can move on to the measurements of recirculation and vascular access flow. Press Choose Protocol. To measure recirculation, press the Recirculation button. An optional parameters screen will appear. You can skip this screen by pressing the OK button at the bottom of the screen, unless you are measuring cardiac output or a pediatric patient. To fill in the parameters, press the field in which you want to enter a value. Then key in the numbers for the field that is highlighted in yellow. Once all the information is entered, press OK to proceed. When the traffic light on the monitor turns green, follow the on-screen directions. Open venous pressure on the dialyzer to avoid pump stoppage. Release saline from the infusion bag for 5 to 6 seconds, or inject 10 milliliters of saline into or before the venous bubble trap. Inject smoothly over 3 to 5 seconds. After the release of saline, the HD03 initiates a countdown. When the countdown is completed, a dilution curve with a percentage recirculation will display on the screen. If you are satisfied with the result, press Choose Protocol to return to the Choose Protocol screen. To measure access flow, press the Access Flow button on the Choose Protocol screen. Follow the on-screen directions, which tells you to stop the pump and reverse the patient's blood lines at their needle connection. Then reset the dialysis pump to 250 to 300 milliliters per minute. When you have done this, press Continue on the monitor screen. You will see a 30-second countdown. When the traffic light turns green, open venous pressure on the dialyzer to avoid pump stoppage. Release saline from the infusion bag for 5 to 6 seconds. The HD03 then initiates a countdown. When the countdown is complete, an access flow dilution curve with the measurements will display on the screen. The traffic light will turn green. To measure another patient, press Select Patient. A screen with a diagram will appear reminding you to return the arterial and venous lines to their normal position and to restore the pump setting. Press Continue and you are ready to measure the next patient. To update your tubing list on the HD03 monitor, click on Database Operations. Scroll down to Update Tubings and click on it. An Update Tubing screen will appear. Choose between Download Latest Tubing List from the Transonic website or Update tubing list from local disk. The Download latest tubing list option works if the computer you are using is connected to the Internet. When you choose Update tubing list from local disk, follow the on-screen directions. Patient information can be accessed by pressing the Patient Record button. Displayed at the top of the patient record screen is the patient's name, ID number, and patient trend graphs. The buttons access the various parameters. Clicking on each button reveals a graph with corresponding variables. The first graph that appears will be the access flow graph. You can also choose this graph by pressing the access flow icon. This graph shows all the access flow measurements for the patient. It also shows the intervention history as yellow triangles and the recirculation values as red diamonds at the top of the graph. To view a patient's complete cardiac output history, press the gold heart icon. If you would prefer to view the cardiac output results from the last dialysis treatment, press one of the buttons with a gold heart and clock. By pressing the patient measurement table icon, all tabulated measurements for a patient including date, time, mode, mean arterial pressure, and result will be shown. Under the mode column, AXSFLW means access flow, REC means recirculation, DLVFLW means delivered flow, CO means cardiac output, and IVT means intervention. Press the OK button at the bottom of the screen when you are done to return to the Select Patient screen. The System Information button displays specifications and details about the HD03 monitor and the arterial and venous flow dilution sensors. The date indicates the recommended due date for service. Tubing indicates the version of the tubing library that has been uploaded. Use the Set Clock and Locale screen to set the clock and clinic location. Time is entered in a 24-hour format. Make sure to select the appropriate time zone. The Locale selection also controls the language translation and date and time format. If you made no changes, press Cancel. If you made any changes, press OK, and you will be prompted to restart the system to use these new settings. To maintain the HD03 monitor, clean the touchscreen with a 1% bleach solution. Do not drop liquids onto the monitor. Keep the HD03 monitor in a dry environment and do not operate in wet conditions. The flow dilution sensors, cable, and outer shell of the connector can also be cleaned by wiping with a 1% bleach solution, an alcohol wipe, or a mild disinfectant soap solution. Do not immerse the sensors or their connector. Regular cleaning is important to prevent the possibility of patient cross-contamination. For more information or technical assistance, call the Transonic Help Desk at 1-800-353-3569 in the USA and Canada.